Okay, everybody, it is 2 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the January 21st, 2021 Waco MPO Policy Board meeting. Chris, has this meeting been properly posted?
Yes, sir. We've posted in accordance with virtual meeting guidelines on the Waco MPO website on January 14th, and a possible quorum of the Waco City Council was posted by the City of Waco on January 18th.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call. That will just be the simplest. Oh, first off, is Mayor Meek on the line? Oh, he just joined. I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call. We do have proxy for the policy board meeting, so that's good. But Mayor, if council has majority here, I think you're going to need to call a meeting also.
Hey, Jacob, this is Hector. Oh, sorry.
We do, and so I will just, I barely made it. Hector was going to sub in for me if I was going to be a few minutes late. So, but we will go ahead and call a meeting of the City Council, Waco City Council today at 2:01 p.m.
Thank you very much. I'll do a roll call. I'm trying to see everybody, but it's a big screen, a lot of people. So please just plan on chiming in and telling me you're here. And if you are a proxy for someone else, if you could chime in when I call their name, that would be helpful. So Bearfield.
Here.
Jacob is here. Bond.
I'm here.
Borderud.
Here.
Ectorling. Ectorling. Emerson.
This is Bradley. I'm here for the much smarter Deidre Emerson.
Well, we hope you do all right. Evans. Kevin Evans. Scott Felton.
I'm here.
Oh, hey, Kevin, sorry. Scott Felton. Travis Gibson. Ross Harris.
Here.
Holmes.
Present.
Jaska. Jim Jaska. Will Jones.
Here.
Dylan Meek is here. Sean Ubry. Joseph Pace.
Here.
Sabito is here. Switek. Stan Switek. Oh, I see your name. I think the mute caught you. Okay.
Here.
And Bo Thomas.
Here.
Very good. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your patience on that process. Just for anyone who is listening in at home, if you are not aware, the public hearing processes have been revised a little bit since the COVID era. Face-to-face meetings are suspended until further notice. Public comments are allowed if registered ahead of time. Written comment cards will be read during item 2. Pre-registered speakers will be added to the meeting during item 2 or during an individual action items public hearing, whichever is most appropriate. Policy board members cannot respond to items brought up that are not on the agenda. And after this meeting is finished, an on-demand recording will be available to the public. So we will move into item 2 on the agenda, public hearing regarding any discussion item or action item on this agenda. Chris, do we have any registrants?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, moving on to item 3, approval of minutes. December 17, 2020 MPO Policy Board meeting minutes have been provided. Are there any changes or corrections from anyone on the policy board? Hearing none, those minutes will stand approved as presented. Moving on to item 4, resolution 2021-1, adoption of amendment 1 to the 2021 through 2024 Transportation Improvement Program. Chris, please give us a presentation.
All right, this is the long drawn-out process of amending our Transportation Improvement Program. I'm not going to review all the details of the long, strange journey we've been on, just give you a brief timeline of where we've been. Back in June, we adopted the TIP, and shortly thereafter, was informed by TxDOT that the collective statewide tip was way outside of fiscal constraint, and the main issue was the category $2 that MPOs have some discretion over deciding how those dollars are to be used. And so we were told that along with all the other 22 MPOs across the state that we would have to remove collectively at $3.5 billion of projects from that document and schedule it for some time after the year 2024. And our share was approximately, well, what we could program was about $50 million. Now, there was in September some thinking that there might be a little bit of flexibility in that amount. So you, the policy board, directed us on one package of projects and then was quickly informed the next month that no, that was still too much. And we would have to identify some additional project postponements. So we've presented to you an alternative back in November. We then received word from TxDOT TP&P division that that version was okay and to move forward. And so we conducted our public involvement process earlier this month and now can actually take action on that amendment. So we're just going to review what's on the table today with for you. This involves highway projects, and we are proposing to remove 5 projects in total. 2 of them are breakouts of a larger Interstate 35 phase from one section between Valley Mills and Irving Lee Drive, another section from Irving Lee Drive down to New Road, primarily a frontage road and on and off ramp projects. We would also be removing the work proposed for Spring Valley Road in the Hewitt area. One of the State Highway 31 overpasses, the one at FM 2311 specifically, and the improvements for Highway 6 between McLaughlin Road and FM 185. What remains are 2 projects. One is the Highway 31 overpass at FM 939 for Category 2, which was the funding source in question. That's about $5 million, but there is another $5 million that the district has identified for this project. The timeline doesn't change. It remains in fiscal year 21, but the mix of dollars as far as federal or state does change. It becomes a state fund only project. And then finally, Mall to Mall remains. This project scheduled for fiscal year 22, but the proposed lending date is actually November of this year. We would also be adding $2 million to provide an incentive to expedite the construction, which turns out to be the maximum that we can actually do for this project. And this would be very similar to what TxDOT was able to offer for the interstate work going on right now. So that new cost is $46.5 million for that project. And so this is still slightly over that $50 million mark that we were given as a goal. But the word we received from Austin was that that's close enough. And so when we look at the map that's in the tip, as far as the highway projects we originally identified, there really is only one project that remains essentially unchanged, and that's the Highway 31 FM 939 project. And then for the Mall to Mall project, of course, it moves up a fiscal year. Everything else gets postponed to sometime beyond fiscal year 24. Now, on each of these projects that we're postponing, it's still very important to do the advanced work for these projects: design, engineering, environmental studies, right-of-way acquisition, utility relocations. And so in order for those phases of work to continue, we still need to make a commitment, albeit beyond the time frame of this tip, and that's represented in Appendix D. And so there are 4 projects that are actually being added, but the I-35 work, we would be identifying the entire phase of work from 12th Street down to Loop 340. Now, this doesn't mean that we're saying this is being proposed for fiscal year 25. It's just sometime after that. The anticipation is that based on your direction from previous conversations is that that's probably going to be significantly after fiscal year 25. But some of these other projects are probably going to be earlier in the pipeline. And I think from a staff perspective, the Spring Valley Road one is the one where I think if we find a pot of money that allows us to get that done sooner, that's probably the next project up. And so when we look at the map of Appendix D projects, the 4 that we've just added, plus all the other projects that are that were already identified for sometime after 24, we've got a lot in here. And next year, when we consider a new transportation improvement program, we'll probably have to discuss whether this is a realistic accomplish or something that we can realistically accomplish in the very near term future. So I mentioned that after we got the go-ahead from TxDOT in December, we commenced our public involvement process. Excuse me. That includes a 10-day public comment period. We conducted a public informational meeting on January 11th, and the MPO Technical Committee recommended approval of this amendment on January 14th. Now, we did receive one comment from the Transportation Planning and Programming Division. We did not receive any other comments. We have 2 projects here that have actually gone to implementation that we initially identified in this document back in June, because we weren't exactly sure when it was actually going to be let for construction or get federal approval. And so since the Elm Avenue Streetscape project has been let for construction, there's no need to have that included in this document anymore. And then for Mall to Mall, the right-of-way phase has received federal approval to move forward. So that phase of work no longer needs to be identified in this document as well. And so we're recommending removing both of those as part of this action. The other comment was to consider grouping the transportation alternative projects that we have a line item identified in this document. The advantage of grouping these is that if there was any changes to these projects or additional projects added that have been awarded funding, then there's no further action necessary on the part of the policy board to have those projects move forward. The drawback is that when you group projects together, you're essentially delegating your decision making. And for transportation alternatives, these are bicycle and pedestrian projects. We have a document that identifies what the highest priorities for this region are. That was adopted by the policy board back in 2019. And we want to make sure that the projects that are receiving funding for this pot of money are consistent with that document. And Chelsea later on in this meeting will be telling you about the next opportunity for funding out of that program. So this is kind of a timely recommendation, but our recommendation is that we continue identifying these projects individually just to make sure that we have that consistency and that the highest priorities of the region are the ones that are receiving awards. And so with that, there are a couple of options that you, the policy board, can consider. There is approving the recommendations that we've presented to you from the technical committee. You can disapprove these changes, or you can make some changes. As long as we're within $50 million of category 2, you can mix and match projects if you feel that's more appropriate. And so, Mr. Chairman, with that, I would be happy to address any questions from the board.
Okay, before we get into public hearing, we will let people ask on the board questions of Chris. I will, for the record, though, read in that Sean Ubry had joined our meeting an item ago, so go ahead and get him on the attendance. But for the board, do you all have any questions for Chris about this item?
Hey, Chris, what was the reason given for the $35 billion in cuts?
So it's $3.5 billion.
$3.5 billion.
And what was happening was that TxDOT was allowing MPOs to accelerate construction timelines on projects out of this pot of money. And when a couple of years ago, we were actually a beneficiary of that. That allowed us to get the I-35 work moving forward probably 3 or 4 years prior to when it otherwise would have been able to go to construction. But statewide, basically every MPO was taking advantage of that. And And so what ended up happening is there's a lot more projects being programmed than there was actually money in TxDOT's cash flow during this 4-year period. And so Federal Highways, when they saw this, said, yeah, that's not a fiscally constrained document. We're going to have to go back to what the cash flow will allow within the next 4-year period.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bo. Could I got a question for Chris real quickly.
Go right ahead.
Hey, Chris, explain again the purpose or the role of Appendix D, if you don't mind.
So under the federal program, you cannot receive environmental clearance for a project receiving federal dollars or potentially receiving federal dollars, or for that matter, a project that has federal interest. And that's a bit broader discussion there about what is federal interest. But from a practical standpoint, we treat all projects that TxDOT is working on that are regionally significant as having a federal interest. In order to receive that environmental clearance, the project has to be identified in the Transportation Improvement Program in some way, shape, or form. The challenge, or catch-22, if you will, here is that if you don't have the funding lined up in the next 4 years, or a commitment of funding, if you will, from the part of somebody, in our case, it's mostly from TxDOT, then the challenge is receiving that environmental clearance. And so what Appendix D does is it says, this project is still significant to the MPO, and that we are making a commitment to say that once those dollars have been committed to this project, we're going to agree to put this within the TIP. And so that's enough of a commitment for Federal Highways to provide environmental clearance for the project. And that's a pretty important step, because without that, you can't start acquiring right away, you can't relocate utilities, and there's some phases of design subsequent to that that could be postponed also.
Thank you.
So my brief rephrasal of that is it keeps the project teed up.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions of the board for Chris? Okay, I'm going to open this to a public hearing at 2:17 p.m. Chris, are there any registrants to speak on this matter?
No, sir, there were not.
Close the public hearing at 2:18. Switched right on me. My only 2 cents or thoughts on this before we see if there's a motion. This is essentially what was presented at the last meeting. This is the exact scenario we talked through. I think maybe the only minor difference is last time TxDOT was fairly confident about the letting date for the multi-wall project, and I think they're more confident now, is my understanding, or it's been verified it should be good to go for that letting date. So really, for the board, this is exactly what we talked about last time.
With the minor changes that we have 2 projects that have already been
That's right. That's right. Those clerical clarifications. Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, I would entertain a motion from the board on this matter.
This is Holmes. I'll move that we approve the proposed amendment.
Got a first from Holmes, second.
Second, this is Hector.
Mr. Sabito. Okay. All in favor of approving resolution 2021-1, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to resolution 2021-2, MPO support for TxDOT adjusted pavement and bridge targets for calendar year 2022. Turn this over to MPO staff.
Mr. Chairman, under the FAST Act, there are 5 that MPOs are required to establish targets for, and state DOTs are also required to establish targets for a statewide perspective. Pavement and bridge condition is one of those, and specifically we're looking at facilities that are part of the national highway system. And this includes the interstate system, this includes other freeway class facilities, and those facilities that are defined as or identified as a principal arterial. In our region, that represents only 11% of the lane miles of our system, but it carries 60% of our regional travel. So these really are the most important facilities within our region and also from a statewide perspective. Now, just as a note, we don't just track the condition of those facilities. We are interested in the condition of the entire system. And so in our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, we also look at all the other arterial collector roads within our region and identifying where we may have issues or where it would be good to have a conversation about how to improve the condition of those roadways as well. And when we're looking at the national highway system, this map shows you what we're talking about. Of course, we only have the one interstate highway, and that's Interstate 35, but everything else in red here is what's currently part of the national highway system. You may remember that a couple months back, we had a conversation about making changes to this system. And so that's actually going to make the system a little bit smaller than what you see here, which is actually going to drive a little bit of our recommendation to you today. So pavement and bridge targets are 4-year targets. We're looking at trying to identify what the state and what the MPO thinks those conditions ought to be in this year 2022. We actually took action on that back in 2018. But one of the things the federal program allows you to do is do a mid-course correction if things are trending a little bit differently than you were anticipating. And for the state of Texas, that turns out to be the case. Things are trending a little bit less good than what TxDOT was anticipating 2 years ago. And since our action was primarily to support the state's targets back in 2018, this triggers a requirement for us to assess whether we're still willing to support those adjusted targets that TxDOT has adopted. And those adjustments were made back in October, and so we have 180 days to make that decision. Now, we're going to start with pavement. And for pavement condition, the interstate system is actually separated out from the rest of the national highway system. And that's mainly because under the federal program, the interstate system is held to a more stringent standard. And so we have to take that into consideration when we're considering these targets. And what we're looking at is the percent of the system that is considered good versus the percent of the system that's considered poor. And of course, there's a lot of detail into how that's defined. And if that's something you're interested in or you have questions about, we have that information available and we can access that. The good news is that we are significantly better than the state as a whole in terms of pavement condition, both for the interstate system and for the rest of the national highway system. And so what you'll see here is that TxDOT's adjustment was very, very small. For the interstate system is 0.1% of percent good, is a little bit more than 1% for the rest of the NHS system on percent good, and then it was a similar amount or about 0.1% for both interstate and non-interstate NHS for percent poor. The good news is that none of our interstate system in McLean County is considered poor, and only about 7% is considered poor for the non-interstate portion of the national highway system. And so one thing we do want to point out is when we looked at this back in 2018, the portion of the non-interstate NHS that was considered good was considerably less than what the statewide amount was. Fast forward to 2020, that's changed. There's been work done since that period of time. And so whereas 2 years ago we adopted a region-specific target for that metric, we now feel comfortable recommending support of TxDOT's target instead. And so for pavement, that is our recommendation to you, is that we go ahead and support the state's targets for pavement condition. And we also want to note that as Interstate 35 reconstruction comes to completion, that their conditions should further improve over time. Now let's shift gears to bridges. Unlike pavements, there's no distinction between the interstate system and the rest of the national highway system. We're just looking at what percent of the bridge deck is in good condition and what percent is in poor condition. And again, there's a lot of detail here about how that's defined. And again, if you have questions about that, we have that information and can go into detail about how that's defined. Here, you will quickly notice that right now, we're a little bit less in terms of percent good deck area than the statewide target. But we're expecting that to change in a big way as a result of the construction that's going on with Interstate 35 right now. There are a number of bridges that are part of that project that were in that fair category. That are either being replaced or having significant work done to them, or have just gone away altogether, like some of the direct connect bridges in front of the TxDOT district office at the Business 77 interchange. And so when we add that into the calculation, we expect that percentage of good deck area to significantly increase to well above what the state average is. When we look at poor deck area, the good news is that at least for the national highway system, everything is at least in that fair category. There are no poor bridges within our region. Now, like I said, there are poor bridges within our region. They're just off of the national highway system. And we do have a concern about those and do engage with TxDOT about the condition of those bridges. And so here you see a little bit of the detail here about why we expect the interstate work to significantly improve the percent of good deck area bridges within our region. And that and some of these statistics are from when we did the analysis in 2018. We're not expecting the percent to be significantly different when we get to 2022. And so similar to pavements, our recommendation to you is to support the state targets or the adjusted state targets for bridge condition as well. And we have a slide here just kind of reiterating what those targets are for that we're considering. So similar to every other process that the MPO undertakes, we did conduct a public process to solicit comment on this action. This was conducted concurrently with the public process for the TIP, and the technical committee recommended support of these targets during their January 14th meeting. And so for the policy board, as you're considering actions, you do have a couple of options here. You can either approve the technical committee recommendation, or you can choose to adopt some region-specific targets for one or more of these metrics, which if that is your interest, we would be bringing that for reconsideration next month. But with that, we'll be happy to address any questions the policy board might have.
Any questions for Chris?
Hey, Chris, this is Hector, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but what is our current bridge condition rating where we're currently at?
Okay, just let me go back here to the slide here. So right now, and again, this is just the subset called the National Highway System, which is just 11% of the lane miles. Right now, we're sitting at 49.4% of those bridges being defined as good, and none of those bridges are considered poor.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Chris? Obviously, the interstate work is really helping those numbers. If I remember right, everything has been reconstructed since 2020 in McLennan County, specifically with the exception of the south half in town that we've been talking about. But it's obviously they're not, that stretch is not in terrible shape because it's not triggering any red flags on these ratings. So that's good confirmation. Okay, this item does have a public hearing. I will open public hearing at 2:30. Chris, do we have any registrants to speak on this matter?
No, sir, we did not.
Close the public hearing at 2:30. Unless there are any other questions, I will entertain a motion from the board on this item.
Move for approval.
Thank you, Councilmember Barefield. Second.
Holmes, second.
Thank you, Councilmember Holmes. Yeah, everyone get ready to unmute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion will pass. The item is approved. Okay, agenda item number 6, discussion and updates from TxDOT regarding significant highway construction within the Waco Metropolitan area.
All right, and my understanding is that Clayton has his own PowerPoint, so I'll stop sharing and give him the ability to share.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is the very north end of our project here. Looking north, you can see the completed southbound frontage road here on the left, the southbound main lane starting to take shape. You can see what will be the permanent southbound exit to Barron starting to be graded out. This northbound frontage road, we actually opened a new concrete right before Christmas. So you can see it opened a traffic here. We're starting to remove the old frontage road here in this area, and concrete pavement is ongoing. You can see some steel in place getting ready to be paved. Okay, now this is looking south. You can see the Barron's Bridge here in the middle of the picture that's recently been placed. All the bond breakers on the ground in this area, steel's placed, getting ready to start concrete pavement operations. Again, on the left-hand side, you can see the stretch of the new northbound frontage road that was opened before the holidays. Again, a lot of pavement removals going on here in preparation for the southbound traffic switch to start on the northbound main lanes. Moving a little further south, this is again the Barron's Bridge looking to the north. Again, here's going to be the permanent entrance ramp from the southbound frontage road onto southbound 35. There is some ongoing drainage work here on the east side of the Barron's intersection. We're currently working through some utility issues there, but that work is ongoing. We'll hopefully wrap up in the next few weeks. And then again, south of the bridge, you can see the asphalt bond breaker that's been placed. It's just ready for concrete pavement at this point. Flipping back around to the south, you can see this is the new US 84 overpass here at the top of the picture. Here at the bottom, actually, since this picture was taken last week, we have opened this permanent exit to US 84 in the southbound direction. What that allows us to do is close this temporary ramp that was in place and complete the connection of the new concrete pavement up to the bridge in anticipation of the traffic switch. And then again, on the left-hand side of the page, you can see the frontage road again that was recently open. Here's just a little bit different shot, same area. Looking back to the north, you can see the permanent ramp I mentioned earlier here that's now open to traffic. At the bottom of the picture, you can see the newly placed US 84 bridge deck that was placed right after the first of the year. Here's a shot directly above that new bridge. You can see the east half of the intersection. Again, as we get traffic shifted to these new main lanes and tear out the northbound, the old northbound pavement, you'll see a lot of this intersection work really starting to pick up. This is from 84 looking to the south. You can see the Waco District Headquarters here at the top of the picture. Here you can see what will be the braided ramp. This will be the exit to Business 77 from southbound I-35. Directly underneath it, this will be an entrance ramp to enter the main lanes once we're complete. Again, you can see where some of the southbound main lane pavement's already been placed. And again, crews are on site working on pavement throughout the project. This Bellmead Drive area, we've got concrete placed up to either side of the intersection. Again, this is one of the areas that as main lane pavement wraps up, you'll see some of the concrete pavement resources start shifting to finish up these little pieces on the frontage road in the spring. Okay, same area, the Business 77 intersection looking to the north. Again, just another view of the exit ramp here, some of the newly placed pavement, and again, those operations are ongoing. And this is actually where we transition from old frontage road to new when we switch traffic right before Christmas. Just another shot here overhead at Business 77. You can see this bridge deck is nearing concrete placement. We're actually targeting a pour this weekend, so should have concrete placed on that bridge deck. You can see to the south where the new main lanes are really starting to take shape. Subgrade treatment's been ongoing. Contractor will be getting ready to place asphalt bond breaker here and continue paving operations. Just a note, when we do, I've mentioned in the past, we're looking to switch traffic from 77 south, basically the end of February, early part of March. That transition will occur roughly in this area here, where we'll swing from old pavement to new pavement right in here. So right where you see the Mlk exit today. And then on the top of the page, you can see portions of the newly constructed northbound frontage road. And then again, you can just really see how the 77 intersection is going to change when we're completed.
Clayton, that switch you were just describing was the main lanes, both northbound and southbound, will swing over to the new pavement?
Correct, Jacob. They'll come from old pavement here, swing across, and then hit new pavement all the way down to the south end of the project. So working to the south, this is from roughly the 4th Street Bridge looking north. This is going up the 77 bridge header. You can see where the permanent entrance ramp is taking shape from the frontage road here. You'll be able to enter the main lanes here. A lot of this pavement's already been placed and is actually serving as the Mlk exit now, as you'll see in the next picture. Here's the current Mlk exit ramp. You can kind of see here, this is what will be the permanent Mlk exit ramp from the southbound main lanes. It'll kind of tie in right in here. You can see we've placed portions of the concrete pavement here, and crews are on site actively working to place steel and concrete in this area too. On the left-hand side of the page, you can see the northbound frontage road through the 4th Street intersection. We have completed drainage work here. We've completed subgrade treatment. We're awaiting bond breaker placement. And again, as some of these concrete paving resources get freed up from the main lanes, this will be paved, and we anticipate this section of frontage road being opened up this spring. A little bit closer view, you can see here again, the Mlk exit. This is the newly placed UPRR bridge over the railroad tracks. And again, the frontage road bridges that were completed as part of our 4A project. And as you look further to the north, you can really see the southbound main lane starting to take shape headed into downtown. Same area, just looking to the north. Here's our new railroad overpass, some of the newly completed pavement. We're very close, honestly, to this point. With the concrete that's been placed, you can actually drive from one end of the project to the other on the new main lanes now, with the exception of a few gaps. So we're getting closer on that southbound direction. Again, just another shot looking south. You can see the concrete that's already been placed. And since this picture's been taken, there's actually been more concrete pours in this area. They've actually double shifted crews, and the 3-week schedule is just solid with concrete pavement in this area in anticipation of that traffic switch in late February. And again, here, this is the Mlk bridge. This here will serve as the exit to University Parks, and it will serve 4th, 5th Street as well in the ultimate configuration. This is directly overhead at the University Parks overpass. Again, you can see the southbound main lanes really coming together. This northbound frontage road, we've completed drainage installation. Crews are working on subgrade treatment. Again, this is another area that we really expect to be cleaned up by springtime. This is around the 4th, 5th Street area. Again, the newly placed bridge, a lot of our paving operations ongoing. We closed the temporary entrance ramp here prior to the holidays. You can see this permanent ramp starting to take place, and it will open up when we switch traffic. Just some notes on some of our side street work here. Just at the bottom of this picture, you can't see it on screen, but it's the 4th Street work. We have a pretty significant utility tie-in scheduled for the first week of February there. Once we get that utility work complete, drainage work will be right behind it. And then depending on weather, we're looking at probably a 4 to 6 week time frame to get a roadway completed and that intersection reopened. Working to the south, we've made some decent progress on some of these side streets. 8th Street has been completed and is open. There's some intermittent closures going on with sidewalk and curb ramps in the area. We got 10th Street reopened. The only side street closed here is 9th Street. We're again working through some utility issues, but are hopeful that in the next 4 to 6 weeks, that intersection is open as well. All right, same area again, looking to the north, you can see the newly completed bridge, a lot of the concrete pavement that started. And again, since this picture was taken last week, there's actually been more paving operations taking place in this area. Okay, looking to the south, you can see the new 11th 12th Street Bridge at the top of the page. On the left-hand side, you can see portions of the northbound frontage road that can get complete. For those that are wondering what's keeping this from opening up, right here, there's probably a 15 to 20 foot hole where we're trying to wrap up some drainage work. The recent snow and rains have kind of created a muddy mess there for us, but we're working to wrap up that drainage work. And again, if we can get that drainage work complete, tie in our concrete pavement here, this portion of the frontage road should be opened up right behind it. So again, hopefully early spring at the latest, we can see that frontage road opened up. Now, just another shot looking back to the north. Again, just another perspective on the southbound main lanes. You can really see what it's going to look like once we wrap up. This is the new 11th 12th Street Overpass. You'll see some of this intersection work starting up in the near future on both the west and east side of the intersection here. And again, just another view of the northbound frontage road work here at that drainage culvert. And this is down at the very south end of the project, looking south. We've got some drainage work ongoing here at the 16th and Spate area. That work will be ongoing for a couple weeks. And again, this is another area we hope to wrap up. Hopefully in the March timeframe, have this area really cleaned up and out of the way. So with that, that's a kind of a brief overview. Are there any questions, comments?
This is Holmes Clayton. I always appreciate this overview. Those aerials are they tell a great story, and your narrative is fantastic. And I guess I ask the same question I do every month. Or do you think we're ahead or behind, or what happened in this last month? Were there any delays, or are we still right on schedule, or how's everything going from a process standpoint?
So overall, we're still looking at an on schedule finish. Again, so substantial completion late 2022, early 23. Again, if all things go perfect with weather, we're looking at a late February traffic switch to get new southbound main lane pavement open. And then probably a month or two after that, you'll see the remainder of the southbound open up to the north end of the project. So there's been a few little isolated areas that have been hit with the weather, but from a overall schedule standpoint, we're still running on schedule.
Fantastic. Thanks, Clayton.
Sir.
Any other questions for Clayton?
All right, appreciate it. I'll pass it back to you.
Clayton, thank you as always. We appreciate it. Okay, as the technology starts switching around, we'll be moving to item number 7, which is Director's Report. Chris?
All right, let me get us back to where we need to be. And so the first item here, we're going to hand over to Chelsea Flager, who is our bicycle and pedestrian planner, about call for projects that TxDOT has with their Translational Alternatives program.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. So we wanted to make sure that the board is aware that TxDOT has released their latest transportation alternatives call for projects. In the past, this has come out about every other year. So the last one was in 2019. As a reminder, it is a competitive program for bicycle and pedestrian project funding. And then the call opened just a few days ago on January 15th. There are several changes to the program this year that are, I think, really good, especially a few changes that are targeted towards cities or communities that have less than 50,000 population, with the intent of making it easier for these cities to apply. And so there are 3 virtual workshops that TxDOT is holding. One is happening concurrently with this meeting right now, but there are 2 more in the near-term future where they will go over the application process and especially some of the changes that are new to this year. So I highly encourage you to maybe get some of your staff to attend if you're planning on applying. Next slide, please. This is just a quick schedule. So the call opened last week. There is a preliminary application deadline on March 1st. This is similar to the process from last time, where that's a shortened application. And then all of the project applications that meet the requirements, I've been asked to submit a more detailed application that's due in June with a target date of October later this year for either an award of funds for non-urban TAA, which is, I believe, communities of 5,000 or less. And then everyone else would be a conditional projects list, which is, again, similar to how they did it last time. So we just ask that if you are planning to submit an application, that you do coordinate with MPO staff, either Chris or myself, and reminding you that we have our active transportation plan that you can reference. Eventually, the project's applications will need to have an MPO letter indicating the intent for us included in our TIP. I believe that is part of the detailed project application. But Chris and I are here to help answer questions, or if you need some help with this process, we are absolutely here for you. And I did send all of this information in an email yesterday to policy board and technical committee members. So the links to the registration and the project information is all there. So, but feel free to contact me if you need help finding that. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, are there any questions for Chelsea on this? Okay. And we've been very fortunate to have a lot of very competitive projects come through this process, and a lot of very important bicycle and pedestrian facilities have been built within our region with this program. And so I highly encourage your folks to look through our active transportation plan and identify some priorities that you think are appropriate for your region. Our next meeting is Thursday, February 18th. I probably don't need to mention anymore that we're going to be using a virtual format. I probably should change this to notifying you when it won't be a virtual format any longer. And next month, we're going to be looking at 3 other targets that are part of the FAST Act program that MPOs are required to consider. Safety targets and transit asset condition targets are 2 that we have to consider on an annual basis. And then the travel time reliability targets, similar to pavement and bridge, are 4-year targets, but we also have the option of considering a mid-course correction, and we are working through recommending to you a mid-course correction. And so we'll be looking at that next month as well. And then, of course, we'll have our continuing discussion and updates from TxDOT on highway construction within our region. And Mr. Chairman, that is my report.
Any questions for Chris or his staff? Okay, thank you very much for your report. Everybody, we will see you February 18th. I believe the staff sent out an appointment that you could actually save the dates for a few months, but they will send out reminders as usual. That being said, we will adjourn this month's meeting at 2:49 p.m. Everybody have a great day.
We will also adjourn the Waco City Council meeting at 2:49 p.m. as well.
Thank you, Mayor Meek. Everyone take care.